Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Logan, and chances are if you're anything like us, you probably have a sizable collection of physical movies you've purchased over the years that have just been collecting dust, either due to the rise of online streaming services, which offer a lot more convenience than these old discs, or maybe you just don't have a Blu-ray player anymore, so you don't have any good way to enjoy your collection. But with that said, well, good old physical media does offer a lot of benefits over the streaming services on the market right now. For example, they're usually going to look and sound better thanks to having less compression. They might offer more advanced audio tracks like lossless Dolby ATMOS or DTS:X, and with some movies, you might just want to watch the special features or watch it in a language that the streaming services just don't offer. So that's why today we're going to be talking about the best current method for ripping your 4K Blu-ray collection from physical discs just like these onto some kind of a computer, hard drive, or network attached storage for viewing without the need for the original disc. If you want to set up your own in-home Plex or Jellyfin server for streaming your content inside your network, well, this is exactly where you want to start. I should quickly mention that this video is actually a follow-up to a very similar guide we made earlier in the year, and while that was supposed to be the last guide you'll ever need for ripping 4K discs, unfortunately, due to no fault of our own, that ended up not being the case. In that video, we showcased this little Pioneer drive that worked right out of the box to rip 4K movies, but since releasing that video, Pioneer has revised that unit with a new firmware that completely blocked their ability to rip these discs. If you bought a Pioneer drive before they were patched like we did, you should be absolutely fine, but at the moment, we can't recommend buying a new Pioneer drive for ripping 4K Blu-rays. So for this video, we wanted to explore other options for drives that would still be easy to set up and use, but most importantly would also support flashing a new firmware, so even if your drive isn't compatible at first, you should be able to get it working fairly easily. This guide requires just a little bit more effort in the beginning, but if you're comfortable using a Phillips head screwdriver, you should be good to go. So with all that said, let's talk about the drive itself. We decided to test out the LG WH14NS40, which is a full-size Blu-ray drive designed to be used in a desktop PC. This one got really good reviews, and most importantly, it's mentioned as being compatible on the MakeMKV forums, which is the software we'll be using to rip our movies. The LG drive comes in at $55, which is a lot more affordable than the $175 Pioneer drive we used last time, but since this is a SATA drive rather than a USB drive, I won't be able to use it with my laptop here without some kind of an adapter, so that's why we also picked up this OWC Mercury Pro, which is an enclosure with electronics inside that'll let you connect the SATA drive over USB, which I can just then plug into my laptop. This set us back another $59 on Amazon, but once you have those two parts, that's all you're going to need, so I'll be sure to leave links to both of those in the description. It's worth mentioning that we've tested this combination of drive and enclosure, and it works great for us, but I urge you to do your homework and read the MakeMKV forum thread to ensure that these are still compatible by the time you're watching this video. Things can change, and we feel bad telling people to buy something that worked fine for us in a video, but isn't compatible by the time it actually reaches your front door. The drive enclosure comes with a few important things in the box, namely a bag of screws to put everything together, rubber feet, a USB 3 cord, and a power adapter, which you'll need later to run the drive. I also have to admit that I was actually really impressed with the build quality of the enclosure. It's all really nice anodized aluminum and steel, no cheap plastic here, and it comes as two parts that slide in and out of each other to give you access to the inside. To assemble it, just slide the Blu-ray drive into the front of this bracket and plug in the two cables coming from the circuit board into the back of the drive. These are keyed SATA connectors, so they only go in one way. Just make sure they're firmly clicked in, and you should be able to push the drive all the way into the bracket. Once you've done that, you should now be able to put the 8 screws on either side of the drive to hold it in place. Once you've done that, the whole assembly should slide neatly into the aluminum enclosure, so now you can flip the drive upside down and affix the 4 included feet using the last 4 screws that came with the enclosure. At this point, you should be able to set the drive down and hook up the USB 3 cable along with the power adapter, and of course plug the other end of the USB cable, preferably into any USB 3 port on your computer, which might have a blue color depending on your model. At this point, don't forget to flip the switch on the back, and if everything went well, you should be able to open the drive tray with the eject button, and the drive will appear as a device on your computer. At this point, your drive's put together and ready to go, so to begin the flashing process, you're going to want to install MakeMKV, and be sure you do this before following the rest of the guide, or you will run into a couple of confusing errors. Thankfully, if you're on Windows, this is a really easy process. Just go to MakeMKV.com and click on the download section. You'll see links to versions for both Windows PCs and Macs. Both Intel and ARM models are supported. And once that's downloaded, just click and run it to install like any regular program. Once it's installed, you're going to want to load the beta key, which is just a small code that you need to copy and paste into MakeMKV to let it run with all the features you need. The developer of the program offers a code for free that changes every 60 days, and you can find it pretty quick on Google if you just search MakeMKV key. Copy that, go to MakeMKV, and inside the help menu at the top, click Register. There you'll see a box to paste that code into, and then hit OK. Relaunch MakeMKV, and you're good to go. At this point, you should be able to see some text on the right side giving you information about your 4K Blu-ray drive, and chances are if you got the same drive we did, it's going to list Libre drive status possible. You can see our firmware version from the factory is 1.05, so if we replace that with a patched firmware, this should change, and Libre drive status should become enabled. One other thing to note is the drive platform needs to say MT1959, just like it does here. If it says something different, then do not go any further without doing extensive research into the compatibility of your drive first. Since everything looks good here, we'll minimize MakeMKV and gather the other files we need for the firmware flashing process. I'll leave a link to the SDF tool flasher thread on the MakeMKV forum, which is the actual software we'll use to replace the firmware. And this page might look a little intimidating at first, but don't worry. We only need a couple of things here, so just scroll down and click the links for the updated version of SDF Tool Flasher, as well as the All You Need firmware pack. These are the only two files that you need to download. Extract both of these to your desktop and double-click on the SDF Tool Flasher EXE. Once the software opens, you should be able to select a drive by clicking here and clicking on the option that appears. You can see the two check marks that came up, so I should be good to go. Just click the drop down to select a firmware file to write, and navigate to the All You Need firmware pack, which you extracted earlier. Inside of that, there's a folder specifically for LG 5.25 desktop drives, which has one firmware file inside. Select that, click Open, and then if everything matches what we have here, you can go ahead and click the Start button. Give it just a little while. Ours flashed in about 20 seconds, and once the window refreshes and says ready, flashing should be complete. I switched the drive off and on and then restarted MakeMKV just for good measure, and once that was done, MakeMKV showed new information for the drive, indicating that Libre drive was now enabled, so we can rip UHD Blu-rays just fine. And that's pretty much it for flashing. I'll be honest, this was actually way easier than I thought it was going to be. Just make sure you take your time to carefully read all the information in the forum threads and all the information that the software is giving you, and it should work perfectly fine. At this point, we're going to change some settings just to make life a little easier during the ripping process, so head on over to the View tab on the top of the window and click Preferences. From this window, enter the General tab and enable Expert Mode. And don't worry, this won't make it any more difficult to use. It just gives us some extra options to customize while we're ripping our Blu-ray if we choose to do so. Click Apply to save that, and next head on over to the Language tab and change your preferred language from None to whatever language you want to automatically grab subtitles and audio tracks for. We speak English, so that's what I'll be using here, but for different types of content, you can select whatever is most convenient. This is just a little time saver that takes some of the guesswork out of selecting the tracks you want from a disc. If everything seems to be working properly, go ahead and put a 4K Blu-ray into your drive, and then once that loads up, click this big button here in the middle of the screen. The disc should start loading, and soon you'll get a menu that looks something like this. If you get taken back to the previous screen, look at the log messages at the bottom of the window and see if you got any errors. If your disk couldn't load properly, you might get an error like this with a blue link to a dump file. You can take that dump file and email it to svq@makemkv.com, and they'll hopefully be able to get the data that MakeMKV needs to open that disk. So wait a couple days and try again. This is a pretty uncommon issue since every time someone uploads a dump, the keys will get published for everyone to use. But if you do have a bad disk, then go ahead and help everybody out by sending that dump in. Once you've found the right track, click the little drop-down arrow to expand that movie track where you'll see many more options appear. For our 4K Blu-ray, you can see there's a video track and many different audio and subtitle tracks for different languages. If you set your preferred language earlier in the MakeMKV preferences, only tracks that match that language should be selected, but you can choose other ones as well. The vast majority of the time, I'm happy with the selections that it makes here, but an optional step that you can do is rename the main audio track to Dolby ATMOS using this box on the right side of the window. You don't have to do this, but it will make the audio show as Dolby Atmos in Plex rather than True HD 7.1, which is a nice little feature. At this point, you can choose the folder you want to rip the video to, and that can be any USB hard drive or NAS that you have connected to your computer. Here, I'll just be using the regular videos folder on my computer. Then I just click this button right here to make the MKV. This will read all of the data from your optical disc that you selected based on the checkboxes in the last screen and copy it to your computer without any loss in quality. And this is what we call a remux, where you repackage the data from one place, like a Blu-ray, to another, an MKV file on your computer, without changing the underlying information. Give it an hour or so and the rip should finish. You can test it in a software like VLC Media Player, or if you save the MKV to a Plex media library, you can scan for new files, and hopefully your movie will show up and play just fine. At this point, you could keep repeating these steps to basically rip your entire collection, but there are some optional things you can do to make sure you have the best rips possible. For example, using a piece of software like Handbrake to compress your movies, which can save a massive amount of space, but for our scenario, storage isn't at any kind of a premium, and we always prefer having the highest quality rips possible, so we choose not to do anything like this to our collection. This is basically all you have to do if you want to start converting your movies into MKV format for playback in apps like Plex, Jellyfin, or VLC Media Player. But there is one more method that I want to show you just in case you have a compatible player, like a Zadoo network streamer for instance, and that is to actually back up the entire file contents of the disk rather than converting it into a single MKV. And you might want to do this to preserve the menus of a disk, for example, but this does come at the expense of taking even more space. Many people will refer to this as making a BD backup, and it's functionally identical to making an ISO of a movie. All you have to do is put the disk into your drive, and at the MakeMKV start page, click on this little yellow folder icon with a green arrow. This will open the backup window, and all you have to do is make sure that decrypt video files is enabled. Choose where you want to save this backup, and hit OK. And that's pretty much it. If you follow these steps for each movie, you should be able to rip your entire 4K movie collection off to a hard drive or NAS and set up some kind of an in-home streaming system if that's something that interests you. If you want to see our take on a guide for something like that, then please let us know down in the comments below. But other than that, I hope you found this video helpful. Let us know if you're considering investing in a setup to rip physical media, and if so, keep us updated on your experience. I hope you found this video helpful, and let us know if you have any questions or comments down in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our future content. And as always, have an awesome day.